Welcome to the Catalyst. So the World Economic Forum back at it again in 2023 with another meeting, this time with a panel on brain transparency. Now, what you're going to see in this quick clip here is how an employer could have access through existing technology today to your thoughts, the images that are rolling through your mind, whether or not you are working, what your emotional state is, and plenty of other pieces of feedback. Take a look at this clip.
You're in the zone. Even you can't believe how productive you've been. Your memo is finished, your inbox is under control, and you're feeling sharper than you have in a decade. Sensing your joy, your playlist shifts to your favorite song, sending chills up your spine as the music begins to play. You glance at the program running in the background on your computer screen and notice a now familiar sight that appears whenever you're overloaded with pleasure. Your theta brainwave activity decreasing in the temporal regions of your brain. You mentally move the cursor to the left and scroll through your brain data over the past few hours. You can see your stress levels rising as the deadline to finish your memo approached, causing a peak in your beta brainwave activity right before an alert popped up, telling you to take a brain break. But what's that unusual change in your brain activity when you're asleep? It started earlier in the month. You send a text message to your doctor with a mental swipe of your cursor. Could you take a quick look at my brain data? Anything to worry about? Your mind starts to wander to the new colleague on your team, whom you know you shouldn't be daydreaming about, given the policy against intra-office romance. But you can't help fantasizing just a little. But then you start to worry that your boss will notice your amorous feelings when she checks your brain activity and shift your attention back to the present. You breathe a sigh of relief when the email she sends you later that day congratulates you on your brain metrics from the past quarter, which have earned you another performance bonus. You head home jamming to the music with your work-issued brain-sensing earbuds still in. When you arrive at work the next day, a somber cloud has fallen over the office. Along with emails, text messages, and GPS location data, the government has subpoenaed employees' brainwave data from the past year. They have compelling evidence that one of your coworkers has committed massive wire fraud. Now, they're looking for his co-conspirators. You discover they are looking for synchronized brain activity between your coworker and the people he has been working with. While you know you're innocent of any crime, you've been secretly working with him on a new startup venture. Shaking, you remove your earbuds.
So one thing that stands out to me right away is the fact that, here the World Economic Forum has all these technologies, all these ways in which they're saying humanity is innovating and technology is allowing us an opportunity to reimagine what's possible in this world. And yet you see in their example, little worker bees working with an overlord, watching them, seeing what's going on in their minds, making sure they're productive, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yet we haven't figured out a way to make it so that people don't have to work their entire lives simply to survive. Like, we have this technological abundance that is literally allowing us to do incredible things, and all we're thinking about is whether the worker bees are productive. Like, why are we not thinking about freeing humanity, right? So this is, one thing that sticks out to me right away. But the speaker who is delivering the presentation, she also brings up, this idea of how these technologies, again, which already exist today, could pose a bit of a scary future. And we all can understand why. But she's saying, regardless of that scary future, and, we need to be careful about how we use this technology. Look, it's here, it's coming. We have no choice but to accept it. And it's probably going to be good and make our world safer, right? So we see the same rhetoric, the same, well, we kind of acknowledge that this could be bad, but we're going to make sure it's really, really, really good. And it's going to make the world safer. It's going to make us more productive. It's going to put us in a better place. And I find that this rhetoric is the ways in which, the general population will, want to accept this technology. But I'm curious, what do you guys think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in some respects, it raises a false choice that they're offering, meaning either we can have a more productive workforce or have less car accidents, or we can't. And the only way to do this is by basically hacking into your brain and controlling your brainwave mechanisms and basically hacking telepathy. And I think what's interesting in terms of employee happiness, for example, it's funny that they would go through all of these extraordinary measures to try to harness technology in this way. What about maybe offering, I don't know, paid parental leave or healthcare for your employees or giving them time off? Maybe that might go a long way to make them happier as opposed to trying to hack into their brainwave in a very intrusive way that, in my opinion, violates their personal autonomy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like what you said there, Joe. To finish it off, is like if we have this kind of technology, what exactly are human beings doing then? You know, like what are the jobs of these people that you're trying that you can hack into their brains to find out what they're thinking and what they're imagining? If we can do that, then what are they putting together widgets or something? Like to keep them on track. And obviously, the way it's being presented is basically for the employer's benefit, as you said. But it raises other questions, which is if they're ready to present this sort of sanguine explanation of what the technology is and what it can do, you have to ask yourself, what do they really have, behind closed doors? It's not like the public is going to be told about the latest on what exists, right? Let's not be too naive about where they've been taking it in the years past, and how long have we had this technology. But I would say that the most important aspect of this has to do with who has access to the information. So if it is kept privately, go for it. Go explore. The technology, see how it can help you in your day. But as soon as you make it available to an employer who has the right to reward you or punish you for what you're thinking, now it becomes a tool of control, and a very, very devastating one if you can actually look at someone's thoughts. And this is what I find the most disturbing thing, because some of these technologies can be very useful to the human being, to their own productivity, but not when the information is exposed and given out to
Right.
others.
And in terms of the technology already being here, as Madhava, alluded to, there are already instances of China actually deploying some of this technology to distribute social credit scores based on, is a person obedient enough to the government, and thus, do they get the green light for the day so they can do their grocery shopping, for example. So we can see
Yeah.
the propensity for abuse of this technology for sure.
And it's the precursor to the Minority Report. I mean, think about it, right? Like a crime is about to happen, and I think we've alluded in previous conversations, like how do we even know these technologies are not making mistakes, right? Like, how are you really going to rely on a technology to tell you whether someone could be about to commit a crime? What if they just thought about it, right? How are you going to discern the difference between they thought about it, because those thoughts sometimes run through our minds, versus they were actually about to do it?
Yeah.
These are huge, huge questions that are coming down in this road. Madhava, it looks like you want something to say there.
Yeah, I wanted just to add on that because does a thought of intention actually mean intention? But we're sort of relying on the technology to tell us what the truth is.
Yeah.
And as we know, some of these technologies that this presenter is offering may seem unimaginable to some people, but it wasn't so long ago that someone came up with a machine that could tell if somebody is telling the truth or not. A lie detector machine, which is kind of amazing, but it makes mistakes. So, what is the gold standard for? Is this person actually daydreaming or not? How do we make that determination? And if you're going to grant legitimacy to this technology as being the gold standard, that's very scary because technologies can be
Right.
hacked.
And just a quick point on lie detector tests. I mean, it's funny that people think that they're infallible, but when they've been scrutinized, courts will say that they're not reliable, that people will try to introduce a
Yeah.
lie detector test in court and say, we're not going to admit it because it's not reliable technology. So, excellent point.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so this brings me to my final point here that I want to talk about with regards to this, which is nuanced conversations around technology and what it can do for us as human beings. And a quick example: I was watching Wakanda Forever, and obviously they're presenting a society that just has incredible technological bounds. They almost sort of make fun of the primitive nature of the existing world that we have today, right? And there's a scene where someone gets into an accident and they sort of activate this shield before they hit the pavement and they keep themselves safe, right? And you say, well, in a world where we could make the world quote unquote safer, right? Which can mean different things to different people. I think if you asked everybody, hey, if you could snap your fingers and eliminate every car accident that happens, would you want to do that? And people would probably say yes. But the question becomes like, okay, well, what do we have to give up to do that, right? Do we need to give up people having access to our thoughts? Well, probably not. We could probably playfully and curiously move towards innovating technology to eliminate accidents for the sake of having a better, safer life without having to control everything and micromanage every action that people are taking. But with that said, the fear side of it, right? So the side of being terrified of these technologies and almost which could thwart innovation to some extent comes through very, very clearly in this article by Unlimited Hangout called Barbara Marx Hubbard, Godmother of Transhumanism and Synthetic Spirituality. And it's sort of coming off the back of this Fourth Industrial Revolution, World Economic Forum, I guess, skepticism, which is very fair skepticism to have. But it's kind of suggesting that technologies that are providing neurofeedback or biofeedback are inherently dangerous and inherently bad. And they summarize their point, or at least my interpretation of this point is summarized through the following quote, talking about Barbara Marx Hubbard here. Hubbard's Global Heart Math Initiative can hook you up to biofeedback wearables that will electronically hypnotize you into a copacetic obedience as you are technologically engineered into a transhuman underling who will happily own nothing, not even your own body, in the new normal that is techno-fascist Fourth Industrial Revolution. And what's fascinating about this is how easy it is for even an investigative journalist to not understand what the nature of a helpful technology actually is. They're suggesting in this piece that the HeartMath devices, in which I use intimately, and I know the company and the people who are in it very intimately, they all they do is provide you feedback of your heart rate. So it's like wearing a heart rate monitor at a hospital, except it hooks up to an app that tells you what your heart rate variability is. There's no hypnotic state that it induces. There's no nothing. These are entirely things that are created through your own breathing patterns. I use X breathing pattern to bring about nervous system regulation in my body, bring about peace in my body. But you see this relationship where there's so much fear towards useful technology that does provide useful biofeedback, and it's thrown out the window because the Fourth Industrial Revolution and Klaus Schwab exist, right? And I think this lack of nuance is probably pretty destructive, but curious to what you guys think.
100%. I mean, that nuance is so important because we always look at, or I would say, when I say we, those who are technophobic and are essentially saying that there's no good use for this technology whatsoever, we'll look at only the potentiality for the technology to turn humans into some transhumanist cyborg where we shed all of our human characteristics, but we never look at the potential for us to humanize the technology, harness it in a way where it's an ally to humans, right? I mean, even if you look at what Elon Musk is trying to achieve with Neuralink, some people may look at that and reflexively say technology bad. But if some of the proposed measures actually bear fruit, such as restoring vision for people who are blind, or utilizing an application that will focus on the motor cortex, restoring full body functionality, these are technologies that we should embrace if they're being used responsibly. I think it's interesting because when we look at technology, it's often a reflection of humanity. So if our view upon humanity is that we're inherently evil and corrupt and there's nothing, no good can come of us developing any type of advancement, then we're going to shun all this technology. But there is a balance that needs to be struck, Joe, as you mentioned, in terms of having healthy suspicion for corporations and governments to abuse this technology versus also acknowledging the potential benefits to actually advance us utilizing technology as an ally.
Well, the error in the Unlimited Hangout article, the technical error was that, she's classifying these technologies, this biofeedback stuff, as ones that can hypnotize the person. And yes, I'm critical of that inaccuracy, but at the same time, we have to understand that, in order to actually facilitate the control of people or their thoughts, there has to be the acquisition of the data from someone first, in terms of their heart rate or the breathing pattern, whatever. So I think it's an unfounded fear in the way it was described in the article. The technologies themselves can be very, very useful, obviously, for a number of reasons. For meditators who want to be reminded that their thought processes are going off track, and so you can help with metacognition, lucid dreaming, and those kinds of techniques. Very, very powerful spiritual practice. There are technologies that can, would be very useful. Again, the point here is that it's private for your own use, as opposed to let's, put it on social media. Hey, these are my patterns over the last 2 days. Aren't you proud of me?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets scary. But lastly, I want to say something about this, which is the more and more we know about people's personal thoughts, let's say, or imagery, the less mystery there is in being human. And I find that if we don't know, like one of the greatest joys of being a human being is like not knowing, what is that person thinking? They don't know what I'm thinking. I can, be deceptive. They can be deceptive. It's really kind of a game. But if you have it all laid out, I think we don't know what we'd be giving up if we start knowing if the veil drops.
Yeah, for sure, Madhav. And that reminds me of, the X-Men. Jean Grey was trying to turn off her telepathy at one point because she wanted to engage in a harmonic, like just an honest relationship with her love interest, right? And it's an excellent point. But also, the technology, what's a Jedi master without a droid, right? I mean, there are examples in fiction and movies and cinematography about responsible uses of technology. And I think the human imagination, we can certainly perceive that. But as always, there's always nuance and balance to it.
Absolutely. And, I would love to know what everybody in the comments is thinking, in terms of this, again, bring a nuanced point to the comments. I'd love to kind of see what people are thinking when we look at these technologies. The common argument out there is that, well, all of these technologies are just a tiptoe into worse and worse and worse ones. It's always about boiling that frog slowly. But I mean, you could say that about any technology, anytime, all the time. Are we to say that we never should embrace technology because of the potential bad that can come, or that it's the consciousness or thinking behind that technology? Let's hear some nuanced points in the comments. That's it. That's all.